Notice our game is the Super Nintendo version of Jurassic Park. Now this might be a pretty surprising game as far as I've kind of stuck with a lot of, your super popular first party games. And especially in this time period, if you look at all of the licensed video games, there weren't very many good ones. In fact, there were a lot of bad ones. I mean, it was a completely different universe than, say, when Warner Bros. Released the Batman game Arkham Asylum, and then have made their perennial sequels of that franchise. But I do have I have a lot of commentary about this game. First of all, it is actually pretty fun. The in-game mechanics I'll probably talk about while actually playing it, but the saddest thing about this game is the fact that you cannot save. There is no save. You might have noticed a little bit of a top 10, or a Hall of Fame, if you will. Even if you beat the game, or if you get game over, you have the ability to enter your name on the on that. But guess what happens the second you turn the power off? All your hard work is gone. So I do want to show off a few things. So first of all, as far as physical items go, check these out. Here is the book, Jurassic Park, and then of course the sequel, The Lost World. I've had both of these books for a long time. A little bit of a embarrassing confession on the Jurassic Park book. Even though I have loved the movie since childhood, well, what child doesn't love movies with giant dinosaurs? I have never read this book. And so, in the last year actually, I've reread at least Lost World, but read both of these books. So, highly recommend those. Of course, as is the case 99% of the time, the books are always better than the movies. And speaking of movies, here I have this really cool set, which is actually contains Jurassic Park, The Lost World, Jurassic Park 3. It even has a Jurassic Park 3D Blu-ray, and then also Jurassic World. So you might think, well, actually this baby is immediately made obsolete because, oops, they have a Jurassic World 2 movie out there, Fallen Kingdom. So one thing, if you look at all of your Michael Crichton works, he's very non-cliche as far as it's not necessarily the case that the main girl characters are like these stereotypical beauties. In fact, it's usually not that. It's the opposite. And in fact, if you read The Lost World, Alan Grant is kind of like, this professor dude, and Ellie Sattler is just his grad student. So there is no romantic connection between the two in the book. But in the movie, it's kind of depicted that way a little bit. But going back to that, it's like, if you look at how Michael Crichton describes Ellie Sattler, she's not like this striking beauty or anything, but she has beautiful, attractive legs, which Dr. Ian Malcolm was checking out at one point in the book. So it's kind of interesting that influence has more or less influenced all of your Jurassic Park movies until we get to Jurassic World, and then we have the lovely Bryce Dallas Howard, which, I mean, who can say enough about that gal, right? But anyways, I still think her role as Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man 3 is the best role that she's done, even though she's kind of a very minorly used side character in that. Alright, so then moving on to a little bit more about the game itself. According to Nintendo Power, the game developers spent a long time working on this game. I think they had this stat of how many man hours they estimated they poured into this. And there's kind of two things going on. One is you have this top-down action, kind of like a little bit of a Zelda vibe. And then if you enter buildings, you enter this first-person mode, like the classic Wolfenstein or Doom. Now, when you're on the top-down mode, you have the smooth 40 frames per second Super Nintendo capability, but when you go inside of a building, that frame rate massively drops down. I don't know what it is, 30 frames, 20. It's kind of choppy, laggy, but again, if you go back to those classic games like Wolfenstein, those certainly aren't smooth baby skin 60 frames per second in those either. Now, let's see. What's cool is they worked on this game for so long, and the fact that you do have like the first-person mode in it, that according to someone who worked on the team, they claimed, or they said, somebody was like impressed. They're like, "Whoa, are you working on a CD-ROM game?" Which was kind of course, the craze during that Super Nintendo era. Like the Sega CD came out. Like companies were wanting to push to CD-based games. Sony even was going to work with Nintendo. Imagine what could have been if the PlayStation and Nintendo were on the same side. Like we would be in a completely different world of today. But Nintendo was, for whatever reason, stubborn and stuck with their cartridge-based games probably a little bit too long. But of course, when the GameCube came out, they have been using cartridges ever since. But then, what does the Nintendo Switch use? Not CDs or discs now, is it? So, totally hilarious. Lots of funny stories. Unpaused. Pretty cool demo of the Super Nintendo Mode 7 tech again. So actually, what's really cool, even though I have never owned, check out this cursor, I have never owned a Super Nintendo mouse, this game was also compatible with that peripheral or accessory. So when you're on like the title screen here, a few instances, like for example when you're in elevators, you can actually use the mouse to make, oh yeah, also using the computers. There's a pretty nifty little homemade computer UI in this. All right, so back in the day, do you remember a few streams ago when I was like kind of complaining or ranting or really reminiscing about how in classic games, when you bought them, they actually came with an instruction manual? Well, here's a good demonstration of why. So check out what happens when I hit start.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Right. So, do you know anything about this game? Like what to do, where to go, what's the goal, what's the object, like how do you win? Where do you go even? Nope. You're all right here with this entire big world to explore. So kind of a few maybe design flaws right off the bat is the fact that unfortunately there is no world map. We kind of have to go and explore and learn this ourselves. But I don't think the developers even originally thought of that as a design flaw, because look at the classic games like, oh, I don't know, Legend of Zelda. Does that have a world map? No. Alright, so here is the gate. I am actually going to go north just a little bit to kind of show off something. Your cattle prod has an infinite amount of energy. It never runs out. All of the ammo, the other ammo that you pick up, does eventually... Well, totally got stuck there. Alright, so these are the motion sensors. Now let's pause here for a moment, and then I'm going to also check my sound settings here in a sec. But even if you didn't really know what to do, or if you didn't have access to the instruction manual, which kind of does explain the game, explains various objectives you have to do, it does mention that if you do touch the motion sensors, they do actually give you hints as to what you need to do. So notice, here is one such hint. Mr. Grant, the raptors have escaped. Do what you can to stop them. Now, what's interesting is the hints that these motion sensors give you are almost randomly selected from all of the objectives you have to do, some of which you can't do out of order. So the actual first thing you need to do is turn on the generator. But again, where in the world do we have to go for such a thing?
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Alright, so here's a fun fact. Starting in 2007, I began to keep track of all of the video games that I beat. So for example, the Raptor points are always constant here. And I'm pretty sure that was the catalyst was actually the fact that there were two very special games, and completely coincidentally, I completed these games on dates that were very important to me. They were Jet Force Gemini and Perfect Dark. And again, I didn't plan it. It just was when I finally beat the game, it's like, oh wow, look at the date that I beat this on. But inevitably, a few years goes by, and you might wonder, oh, wait, what year was that? You can remember the date, but not necessarily the year. So that was the catalyst as far as like, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if I kept track of every single time I reached the credits of a video game that I would like write it down, like what playthrough, was it the first time I've played it, the 50th time, and the date that I completed it. So as you can see, the inside section, it is a bit choppy, and I understand like a lot of people would not want to give this sort of game patience. Alright, so here's the computer, but I don't believe we can use the computer yet. So in any building, if we go to any computer, here's the message we get. Error, main system down. Action, turn on generator before trying to reboot the system. So we actually have gone to the correct building, the Nublar utility shed. Aha, notice, every once in a while it has a few of these rooms labeled. That says generator room. So what is interesting, an interesting difference, when you're on the overworld, all of the dinosaurs, or I should say most of them, the hidden ones respawn. So the raptors will always be jumping out to get you. But inside buildings, what's very interesting is the dinosaurs, if you destroy them, they're gone forever. So here's the power button. After all of that work, we have turned the generator on. But even though dinosaurs disappear, fun fact, items will respawn every time you walk outside and back in. So notice, here are some health recovery items, here's some weapons, and in fact, other things, such as 1-ups, also respawn. So if you kind of get into a good rhythm, you actually can keep playing this game indefinitely. Let me replay that message. In certain rooms, night vision goggles are required. The sad thing is, though, you have to have the battery in that respective building. So it's not just, oh, I get night vision goggles in the game. It's if I find the battery in this Nublar utility shed, I can go in dark rooms in Nublar utility shed only. Alright, now what happens if we go to any computer? We've turned the generator on. Oh, system cannot boot from this console. Bummer, man. So as you progress through the game, though, the game itself does give you subtle hints as far as things you need to do first before you do maybe what you're trying to do. But that's the first step there. My weapon of choice in this game is the what I have equipped, the missiles and bolas. Alright, so here's another thing. You actually have to collect and find all of the eggs hidden in the overworld. Even if you do every single other objective and then go to the helipad to be escaped out, it will tell you how many eggs left you need to find. Oops. So that's kind of a hint as far as you have to find all of the eggs. Oops. So incidentally, those rocks are like a one-hit kill. We have to trigger that one though, so we can get around it. So here's what the eggs look like. And every time we pick one up, now we have 17 eggs left. Okay, so as you kind of explore the overworld, you'll see a few of the areas are indeed gated off. But in my opinion, the helipad is actually kind of hidden in a way. Ah yes, do you remember this guy, Dennis Nedry? He's like such a, good guy, right? So he says, hey Grant, raptors will not attack unless you shoot at them. Totally believable, right? Alright, here's another thing. I'll say a little bit more about it, but you'll kind of notice letters, just random letters in the overworld. So it's like, what in the world is that all about? Okay, so here is like your trank darts. So that's another primary weapon. I don't really like them though because it only temporarily tranquilizes. But at the same time, that is the only weapon that can repel the T-Rex. Alright, if you get a full jump, you can actually jump across this canal, and that is where the helipad is. Oops. Stinking raptor. Alright, Tim always has this scripted response. If you see the Triceratops run like crazy, whenever you get close to the Triceratops area, you get that message. And that's a one-hit death also. But notice there's a little secret entrance in here, alcove, to get another egg. So let me see if I trigger this Triceratops again. Or not? Okay, cool. So you might say I have 4 little hat icons. That's how many lives I have. And every time I die, you will respawn either at the last motion. If you died on the overworld, it will be the last motion sensor you touched. Holy smokes! Or the last building you came out of. So notice this building was what I came out of last, but I did touch one of those motion sensors. Can we only have 255? Do we max out? Like, I don't know. I should test that out sometime. But honestly, the SNES 9X, I believe I've complained about this already, is not that good as far as built-in tools for hacking. So I would have to be using the Messen emulator, which is like amazing. It's like as epic as Google developer tools, to be honest. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of come out of this gate northwardly here. And if we go due north, we will find the visitor center just above us. And in the visitor center, this is actually where we have to reboot the computer. But unfortunately, we can't. I'll show off the gas grenades here. So it's kind of a frustrating weapon. Even though it's powerful, the bolas just make life easier. So I'll pop in and out so I have a new respawn point. Ah, yes. Timmy also says, Mr. Grant, do not shoot the Gallimimus. They may stampede. They stampede anyways, Tim. Now, if we were to find, or attempt to find, the computer in the visitor center, we can't access it. In fact, I'll go ahead and show that now so that you can kind of see how we actually have to progress through this game. Oops. So here's another embarrassing thing. When I first had this game, I didn't exactly understand that, this is just the ground floor. So I explored every single thing I could in the visitor center, only on the ground floor. I like how there's a dinosaur in the refrigerator. Well, that's unfortunate. I'm actually out of bullet ammo. Alright. That should be good for now. So let me kind of get back to the exit here. Now, of course, I had discovered this elevator, but I didn't know it was an elevator. And here's the embarrassing thing about it. So you go inside, right? And it like starts playing this tune, like elevator music. But I thought it was like this, I don't know, music jukebox. And so here I'm reading exit select. So I would always exit, and similarly, look at the other thing. It says button A left mouse. So I'm like, oh, maybe in order to like do whatever you need to do, you need the Super Nintendo mouse, which is why I kind of brought up the thing in the first place, because it's like I didn't realize that, oh, you can, this is an elevator. You can press the A button to go up, and now I'm on a different floor to explore in the visitor center. It was like so awkward and embarrassing, but funny at the same time. Alright, let me get to the key and then I'll finish a story that I kind of stopped in mid-sentence several minutes ago. Alright, so this door right here, access denied. You need, Dennis Nedry's ID card. So I went ahead and hit pause there. So, unfortunately, here is, in my opinion, the second biggest design flaw, unfortunately, with this game, is that when you reach a locked door and you don't have the key, it tells you that, hey, you need Dennis Nedry's ID card to get through this door. However, if you open a door that does require a key card that you have in your inventory, you get no message at all. So in this very kind of wandery, explorative game, you might accidentally pick up a key card and then be exploring some building and not even know you actually need the key card for that building. And so then when you go for a second attempt and be like, okay, in this building such and such I found this, and when you go, it's like, bam, access denied. You need Donald Gennaro's ID card, or Ellie Sattler, or Dr. Wu. And so then it's like, well, crap, where in the world was that ID card? So it's like, it was very difficult to kind of piece together one playthrough at a time, what to do, where to go, in what order. So really, in order for us to get through this door and get to the computer where we need to reboot the system, we need to find where is Dennis Nedry's ID card. Alright, so now, story time. Because this ID card is actually quite a ways away. Now, as I was saying, in 2007, I began to keep track of all of my video game playthroughs, and I have kept track for ever since. So what is that? Years. 14 years or so? Crazy. Well, if you're keeping track of games you've beaten, essentially you're going to have, what about games that are in your library that you have never beat? Unbeaten games. And so I had similar lists as far as, okay, here's a list of games for Super Nintendo or GameCube or Wii that are still unbeaten. And so as months turn into years, this particular game shatters all of my records. It wasn't until much later in life where it's like, alright, let's put some focus into this game, let's start generating maps, let's start piecing together all of the information that we need in order to actually, be able to beat it. So I beat this much later in life, like, as an adult, and so this shatters the record for the longest unbeaten game, which was like many years, which is kind of hilarious in its own right. Pachycephalosauruses are very territorial. Oh man, oh! That was hilarious. "14 eggs to go."
Run.
All we gotta do is not shoot the raptors and they don't attack. Like, it's so simple. Timmy, not now. Gonna make me die. Now, here's a little bit more of a commentary on the whole world map thing. Alright, so ever heard of a game called Citizens of Earth? It's actually a pretty awesome, fun game. And I guess it was like some sort of like Kickstart project or something. I don't quite know. Okay, there's our Triceratops warning message. Ah, finally, bolas. 13 eggs left. So as long as we walk enough to the side here, this Triceratops won't trample us dead. So as this guy, or whatever, is making his Citizens of Earth indie game, and having Kickstart pledges or whatever, he started to add and said things that were never even going to be in the game, like for example, a world map. However, unfortunately, on this world map you can't zoom in. So even though you can, like, let's pretend I pause and see a map of the area, it's like so zoomed out that you can't really, it's not super useful. And so you would need some sort of like extra feature to zoom in or whatever. And I mean, when the game launched, Citizens of Earth, people complained about that. They're like, it does have a world map access option, but it's like not incredibly useful. Like, valid critiques. Oh man. Alex has very few lines in this movie, or video game. Your motion sensor will only work when the computer is rebooted. I think when you reboot the computer, I don't think she has any more lines to say, and then, of course, it's not going to say what you need to do if you've already done it. Alright, I gotta show off the T-Rex, though. Whoa! So it's interesting, after people complained, though, about this feature, amongst many other flaws, unfortunately, that Citizens of Earth had, the game developer was like so prideful or so arrogant, he like didn't even like, he can't even take counsel or guidance. He like sat there and defended himself, saying like, well, the world map was like not even supposed to be in the game. Like that's just all bonus. So basically, since it was like added, I guess, and he what did it for free, like therefore people shouldn't complain that it's not very useful. It's like, wow. Like I mean, not to be all like superiority here or anything, but like when I'm making my ROM hack, I'm like probably the most self-critical person as far as like, okay, what about this game, this level, this course, this ASM code? Could I improve it? Could I make it better? Could I make this level more fun? And I do currently have a 0.91 version, but even that, it's like, obviously I'm not quite done. I still have to do all of the boss battles, which I kind of want to make custom in there. Even if I complete the bosses and have a 1.00 version, guess what? There are still, I have this huge list of things that I want to like improve. Like I'm not gonna sit there and be like, hey, where's the, okay. I need to get the tranquilizer darts right quick. There should be some. There's always tranq darts near a T-Rex area. Ah, there they are. These are like boos. They only pursue you if you're not facing them. That's why they're always kind of running away from you. But yeah, so whoever the creator of Citizens of Earth is, I'm extremely sad he's such a worthless, arrogant person that is going to sit there and defend flaws in his video game. Alright, so check this out. T-Rex! Hitting him with this does slow him down. You can't ever actually defeat him, and, well, I should show off the death animation. So, now I have 3 lives remaining. Let me show off a little bit of a future. Now, in this game, it is definitely designed to be a little bit of filler, as far as we don't have this beautiful linear go from place to place to place to place, objective, 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 win. There's a certain amount of backtracking, and even the most optimal path does require a lot of backtracking. But in any event, check out this elevator. We need Donald Gennaro's ID card to get into this elevator. So we'll definitely be back to this building. But see that little icon? There's only one ID card on the overworld, and has like a different sprite, if you will. But here's what ID cards look like in the first-person mode. I always thought it looked like a little hat, but I think it's supposed to be like a flat dimensional thing where it's like white but then has a red stripe in the middle of it. But one thing you might notice about this game is it looks 3D, but it's actually not exactly 3D. You will always be facing, like the raptors, you will always be facing the front or the back of the raptors